Dr. Jake Martinez pushed through the thick jungle plants and wiped sweat from his face. The alien forest on planet Zarian 7 was hot and wet like a steam room. Strange blue and purple plants glowed softly around him while he tried to find his way back to the ship. He had gotten separated from his team 3 hours ago when something that looked like a giant bird had attacked them. Everyone had run in different directions, and now Jake was alone. Jake carried his medical bag and a plasma rifle that he hoped he would not need to use. He was a doctor, not a soldier, but everyone on the exploration ship had to carry weapons on dangerous planets like this one. The jungle made weird sounds around him. Something howled in the distance, and Jake walked faster. He needed to find the landing site before dark, or he might become food for whatever lived in this place. The trees were huge and covered in vines that moved even when there was no wind. Jake tried to use his compass, but the magnetic fields on this planet made it spin wildly. He had to guess which way to go and hope for the best. His boots made soft sounds on the wet ground, covered in rotting leaves and strange mushrooms that glowed green dot. Then Jake heard something that made him stop walking. It sounded like fighting. Metal hitting metal and angry growls that did not sound human. Jake knew he should walk away and find his team, but his doctor training made him curious. Someone might be hurt and need help. He moved slowly toward the sounds and hid behind a big tree trunk. What Jake saw made his eyes go wide with shock. A creature that looked like a mix between a human and a big cat was fighting against 6 wolf-like beasts. The cat person had orange and black striped fur and moved like a dancer. She used 2 glowing swords to fight the wolves. Her muscles moved under her fur as she jumped and spun to avoid their teeth and claws. The wolves were as big as horses, with teeth like knives and red eyes that glowed in the jungle light. They circled around the Catwoman, trying to bite her from different sides. She was fast, but there were too many of them. Jake could see blood on her left arm, where one of the wolves had scratched her. The Catwoman fought with skill that Jake had never seen before. She moved her sword so fast, they looked like lines of light. When one wolf jumped at her, she rolled under it and cut its belly with both blades. The wolf fell down and did not get up again. But more wolves kept coming from the trees around them. Jake watched as one of the biggest wolves opened its mouth and shot something at the Catwoman. It looked like a big thorn covered in spikes. The thorn hit her right shoulder and went deep into her body. She screamed in pain and dropped one of her swords. Dark blood ran down her arm, and she started to move slower. The wolves saw she was hurt and moved closer. Jake knew she would die if he did not help. His hands shook as he lifted his plasma rifle. He had never shot at living things before, but these wolves would kill the Catwoman, and then probably kill him too. Jake aimed at the biggest wolf and pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt hit the wolf in the chest and burned a hole right through it. The other wolves turned to look at Jake with their red eyes full of anger. Jake shot 2 more times and hit another wolf in the head. The remaining 3 wolves looked at their dead pack mates and then at Jake with his smoking rifle. They made angry sounds but backed away into the jungle. Jake waited until he could not hear the wolves anymore, then walked toward the Catwoman. She was sitting on the ground holding her wounded shoulder. The big thorn was still stuck in her body with its spikes pointing in all directions. Blood ran between her fingers, and her breathing was fast and shallow. The Catwoman looked up at Jake with yellow eyes that had thin black lines in the middle, like a real cat. Her face was mostly human, but with a small nose and mouth full of sharp teeth. She had long dark hair mixed with her fur and pointed ears on top of her head. Even hurt and bleeding, she looked dangerous. She said something in a language Jake did not understand. Her voice was rough and angry. Jake held up his hands to show he did not want to fight. He pointed at his medical bag and then at her wound. The Catwoman watched every move he made, like she expected him to attack. Jake took a step closer, and the Catwoman growled deep in her throat. The sound made Jake freeze in place. She bared her teeth, and her claws came out of her fingers. They were as long as his thumb and sharp as razors. Jake realized she did not trust him and thought he might hurt her, but Jake could see the poison from the thorn was already working. The edges of her wound were turning black and green. Her yellow eyes were getting dim, and her hands shook. She was dying, and Jake was the only one who could save her. He just had to convince her to let him help before it was too late. The Catwoman tried to stand up, but fell back down with a grunt of pain. The poison was spreading faster now, and Jake could see dark lines moving under her fur like black rivers. She needed help right away, or she would be dead in less than an hour. But every time Jake moved closer, she showed her claws and growled at him. Jake put his rifle on the ground and kicked it away to show he was not a threat. Then he opened his medical bag slowly so she could see everything he was doing. He pulled out a scanner that would tell him about the poison and held it up for her to see. The Catwoman watched him with eyes that were getting more tired by the minute. The scanner made soft beeping sounds when Jake pointed it at her wound. The readings were bad. The thorn had broken off inside her shoulder, and the poison was attacking her blood. Worse than that, the thorn had spikes that would tear up her insides if someone tried to pull it out the wrong way. Jake had seen wounds like this before on other planets. Without surgery, she would die for sure. Jake tried to talk to her in simple words and used his hands to show what he meant. He pointed at the thorn, then at his medical tools, then made cutting motions to show he needed to operate. The Catwoman understood what he was trying to say and shook her head hard. She did not want him to touch her. She tried to pull the thorn out herself, but screamed when the spikes cut deeper into her shoulder. More blood ran down her arm, and she fell forward onto her hands and knees. Jake could hear her breathing getting rough and fast. The poison was reaching her heart and lungs now. Jake moved closer very slowly with his hands up. The Catwoman lifted her head and looked at him with eyes full of pain and anger. She said something in her language that sounded like a warning. Then she spoke in broken human words that surprised Jake. "Stay back, human. Your kind lies and tricks. I die with honor, not with your poison in my body." Jake stopped moving and looked into her yellow eyes. She thought he was trying to hurt her, not help her. Her people must have bad experiences with humans before. Jake needed to make her understand that he was a doctor and only wanted to save her life. "I am a healer," Jake said slowly and clearly. "I help sick and hurt people. The thorn in your shoulder has poison that will kill you. I can take it out and clean the poison from your blood. But I need to do it now before it is too late." The Catwoman stared at him for a long time. Jake could see she was thinking hard about whether to trust him. Her body was shaking now, and her breathing was getting worse. The black lines under her fur had spread to her neck and were moving toward her head. "Your people are weak," she said, through gritted teeth. "You hide behind machines and lies. My people are strong. We fight with honor and die with honor. I do not need help from a soft human." Jake felt angry at her words, but he pushed the anger down. She was dying and scared and did not know him. He had to make her see that strength meant different things to different people. "You are right that I am not strong like you," Jake said. "I cannot fight 6 wolves with swords like you did, but I know how to fix bodies and stop poison. That is my strength. Your strength saved you from the wolves, but now you need my strength to live." The Catwoman looked down at her wound. The area around the thorn was now completely black, and the smell of infection was getting stronger. She could see that Jake was right. Her warrior training told her she was going to die soon, no matter how strong or brave she was. She looked back at Jake and saw something in his eyes that made her pause. There was no fear or hatred there, only concern for her pain and a desire to help. Maybe this human was different from what she had been taught. "If you keep looking, I will jump you," she said in a voice that was getting weaker. "Now hurry and get the thorn out." Jake felt relief flood through him. He moved quickly to her side and opened his medical kit. First, he gave her a shot of painkiller. That would help, but not make her sleepy. She needed to stay awake in case something went wrong. Then he used a small laser to clean around the wound. The Catwoman watched everything he did with sharp eyes. Jake could feel her muscles tense under his hands, ready to attack if she thought he was hurting her on purpose. But as he worked, she began to relax a little. His hands were gentle and sure as he examined the thorn. Jake used a special tool to look inside the wound without making it bigger. The thorn was worse than he thought. It had 3 main spikes that were hooked backward. If he pulled it straight out, it would tear major blood vessels, and she would bleed to death in seconds. "This is going to hurt," Jake warned her. "But I have to cut the spikes off before I can remove the main part. It will take time, but it is the only safe way." The Catwoman nodded and gripped her remaining sword tightly. Jake used a tiny laser cutter to carefully slice through the first spike. The Catwoman made a low growling sound, but did not move. Sweat ran down her face and mixed with her fur, but she stayed perfectly still. Jake worked as fast as he could, while being careful not to damage healthy tissue. The second spike was harder to reach, and he had to make a small cut to get to it. The Catwoman's claws dug into the ground, but she did not pull away. When Jake finally removed the last piece of the thorn, dark poisoned blood poured out of the wound. He quickly cleaned it with antiseptic and gave her an injection of medicine. That would fight the poison in her system. Then he sealed the wound with synthetic skin that would help it heal faster. That the whole operation took almost an hour. By the time Jake was finished, the Catwoman was exhausted, but her breathing was better, and the black lines under her fur were fading. She would live if infection did not set in. Jake sat back and wiped sweat from his face. His hands were covered in her blood, and he was tired from concentrating so hard. The Catwoman looked at him with new respect in her yellow eyes. "You have skilled hands, human," she said quietly. "Perhaps there is more to your people than I was taught." Jake helped the Catwoman sit up against a tree trunk. She was still weak from blood loss, but the poison was leaving her system. Her name was Kira, and she came from a warrior clan that lived in the mountains far from this jungle. She had been hunting the wolf pack for 3 days because they killed her friends. Jake told her his name and explained that he was lost too. His communication device was broken, and his team was somewhere in the jungle looking for him. Kira listened carefully to his words, and her ears moved to catch sounds from the forest around them. "The wolves will come back," Kira said as she tested moving her wounded arm. "They smell blood and death here. We must move before the sun goes down, or we will be their next meal." Jake looked around at the dark jungle. He had no idea which way to go, and night was coming fast. The glowing plants would give some light, but not enough to see danger coming. Kira could see better in the dark with her cat eyes, but she was still hurt and weak. "Can you walk?" Jake asked as he packed his medical supplies. Kira pushed herself up using the tree for support. Her legs shook, but she stayed standing. Pride would not let her show weakness, even though Jake had just saved her life. She picked up her sword with her good arm and tested its weight. "I can walk," she said firmly. "The question is, can you keep up human?" They started moving through the jungle, with Kira leading the way. She knew how to read animal tracks and could smell things Jake could not detect. Her nose told her which plants were safe and which ones would poison them if they got too close. Jake was amazed at how she could find a path through plants that looked the same to him. But Jake had skills that surprised Kira too. When they came to a wide stream, he used a device from his pack to test if the water was safe to drink. When Kira got thirsty, he purified water for both of them with tablets that killed harmful bacteria. His scanner could detect dangerous animals, hiding nearby before even Kira's sharp senses noticed them. They walked for 2 hours before Kira had to stop and rest. Her wound was bleeding again, and she was breathing hard. Jake made her sit down while he checked the injury. The synthetic skin was holding, but she had torn some of the healing tissue underneath. "You need to take it easy," Jake said as he applied fresh bandages. "Your body is still fighting the poison and healing the damage. If you push too hard, the wound will open up again." Kira wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Her warrior training taught her to push through pain, but it also taught her to know when her body had reached its limits. She could feel that she was running on willpower alone now. Jake used his equipment to build them a shelter from branches and a waterproof sheet from his pack. He also set up sensors around their camp that would warn them if large animals came close. Kira watched him work and saw how he thought about problems differently than her people did. Where she would fight or run from danger, Jake tried to outsmart it. Where she relied on strength and speed, he used tools and knowledge. She began to understand that humans were not weak, they just had different kinds of strength. That night, they took turns keeping watch. During Jake's watch, Kira slept fitfully and made soft growling sounds. During her watch, she listened to Jake's steady breathing and thought about how gently his hands had worked to save her life. No warrior from her clan would have risked their safety to help an enemy. The next morning they were woken by a sound that made both of them freeze with fear. Something very large was moving through the trees toward their camp. Jake's sensors were screaming warnings, and Kira's fur stood up on her back and arms. Through the morning mist came a creature that looked like it had escaped from a nightmare. It was twice as tall as Jake and 3 times as wide. Its body was covered in thick armor plates, and it had 6 legs with claws like spears. Worst of all, it could breathe out green gas that made the plants around it wither and die. The creature saw their camp and made a sound like thunder mixed with the scream of tearing metal. It wanted to eat them, and nothing Jake or Kira had could stop something that big and dangerous. Jake's rifle might scratch its armor, and Kira's sword would break against its thick skin. "We run," Kira said as she grabbed her weapon. "Wait," Jake said as an idea formed in his mind. "Running will not work. That thing is faster than both of us. But maybe we can make it go to sleep instead of trying to kill it." Jake opened his medical bag and pulled out several bottles of liquid medicine. He also took some berries from a plant they had passed the day before. Kira had said the berries made animals sleepy if they ate too many. "I can make something that will put it to sleep," Jake explained quickly. "But someone has to get close enough to make it swallow the mixture. Close enough to touch it." Kira understood what he was asking. She would have to get within reach of those massive claws and that poisonous breath. One mistake would mean death. But they had no other choice. The creature was already pushing through the trees toward them. "Make your sleeping drink human," Kira said as she stood up and flexed her claws. "I will dance with the monster." Jake worked faster than he ever had before. He mixed the medicines with the berry juice and added some stimulants that would make the mixture work quickly. The creature was only 50 feet away now and getting closer with each step. Kira ran toward the monster with her sword ready. She was still hurt and weak, but she moved like flowing water around its attacks. When it tried to step on her, she rolled away. When it breathed poison gas, she jumped to the side. She was too fast for it to catch, but too small to hurt it. Jake finished making the sleeping mixture and put it in a medical injector. He ran toward the fight and threw the injector to Kira. She caught it without looking and kept dancing around the creature's massive feet. The monster opened its mouth to breathe more poison gas, and Kira saw her chance. She jumped straight up and landed on its head between its eyes. Before it could shake her off, she jammed the injector into its mouth and pushed the trigger. The creature roared and shook its head wildly. Kira was thrown clear and hit the ground hard. For a moment, Jake thought she was dead. Then the monster started to sway on its feet. The sleeping mixture was working. It took 3 more steps and then crashed to the ground like a falling mountain. Jake ran to Kira and helped her sit up. She was bruised and her shoulder was bleeding again, but she was alive. They looked at the sleeping monster and then at each other. They had done something that neither could have managed alone. After the giant creature fell asleep, Jake and Kira moved their camp to a safer place. They found a small cave hidden behind a waterfall where they could rest and talk without worry about more monsters finding them. Jake treated Kira's reopened wound while she told him stories about her people. The Falanians lived in great cities built into mountain cliffs. They were proud warriors who valued strength and honor above everything else. Children learned to fight before they could properly walk. Adults proved their worth through combat and hunting dangerous beasts. To die in battle was considered the greatest honor. "Your people sound very brave," Jake said as he changed her bandages. "But what about those who are not good fighters? The old and sick and injured?" Kira looked confused by his question. "The weak serve the strong. That is the natural way. Those who cannot fight make weapons and armor for warriors. Those who cannot hunt, grow food, and make clothes. Everyone has their place." Jake thought about this while he cleaned his medical tools. In human society, we believe everyone has value no matter how strong they are. Our greatest heroes are often people who heal others or make discoveries that help everyone live better lives. We think taking care of the weak makes us strong as a group. Kira found this idea strange. Her people had always believed that helping the weak made everyone weaker. But she remembered how Jake had risked his life to save her even though they were enemies. Maybe human ideas about strength were not as foolish as she had been taught. "Tell me about human warriors," Kira said. "Do they fight with honor, or do they hide behind their machines like cowards?" Jake smiled and told her about human soldiers who ran into burning buildings to save people they did not know. He spoke of medics like himself who went into battle zones to help wounded fighters on both sides of a war. He described how human warriors often died protecting civilians who could not protect themselves. "We have a saying," Jake explained. "The strongest person is not the one who wins every fight. The strongest person is the one who fights for those who cannot fight for themselves." Kira listened carefully to his words. She began to see that humans had their own kind of warrior code. It was different from her people's way, but it was not without honor. Maybe the two species had more in common than anyone realized. That night, they took turns sharing stories from their worlds. Jake told Kira about Earth's great cities and vast oceans. He described snow-covered mountains and deserts that stretched beyond the horizon. Kira painted word pictures of her homeworld's floating islands and crystal caves that sang in the wind. They discovered that both their peoples loved music and art. Both valued loyalty and protecting their families. Both had legends about ancient heroes who sacrificed themselves to save others. The differences that had seemed so important began to matter less than the things they shared. On the 3rd day of traveling together, they heard sounds of distress coming from a rocky valley below their path. Someone was calling for help in a language that neither Jake nor Kira understood. When they looked down, they saw a group of small blue-skinned aliens trapped under fallen rocks. The aliens looked like they had been caught in a landslide. Several were badly hurt, and one was pinned under a boulder too heavy for the others to move. They were crying and trying to dig their injured friends out with their bare hands. "We should help them," Jake said as he started down the slope. "Why?" Kira asked. "They are not our people. They are not our responsibility. We have our own problems to worry about." Jake stopped and looked back at her. "Because they are hurt and afraid, and we have the power to help them." What other reason do we need? Kira thought about this. Her warrior. Code said she should only fight for her own clan and her own honor. But watching Jake already climbing down to help strangers made her feel something she had never experienced before. She saw real strength in his willingness to risk danger for people he did not even know. Kira followed Jake down into the valley. Together, they began moving rocks and treating injured aliens. Jake used his medical skills to stop bleeding and set broken bones. Kira used her strength to lift heavy stones and dig trapped victims out of the rubble. The blue aliens were grateful, beyond words. They touched Jake's hands and Kira's fur with reverence, as if they were gods who had come down from the sky to save them. Their leader tried to give Jake and Kira precious stones as payment, but both refused to take anything. Helping others should not be done for reward, Jake explained through hand signals and simple words. We help because it is right. Kira found herself nodding in agreement. She had discovered something new about honor. True honor was not just about being strong enough to win fights. It was about being strong enough to protect those who could not protect themselves. Working together, Jake and Kira saved all the trapped aliens. None of them died, and most would heal completely with time. As Jake and Kira prepared to leave, the grateful aliens gave them a map showing the safest path through the jungle and warned them about dangerous areas to avoid. That evening as they made camp, Kira looked at Jake with new understanding in her. Yellow eyes. I was wrong about humans, she said quietly. I thought you were weak because you do not have claws or fangs or thick fur. But I see now that you have a different kind of strength. You are strong enough to care about strangers. That takes more courage than fighting monsters. Jake smiled and touched her uninjured shoulder gently. And I was wrong about your people, too. I thought you were just violent and aggressive. But you have honor and loyalty that runs deeper than anything I have ever seen. You were willing to die rather than abandon your friends to those wolves. That is true strength. They sat together watching the alien stars come out in the strange sky above them. Two different species from different worlds who had found common ground in their shared desire to protect others. Neither was the same person they had been when they first met in that jungle clearing. Kira had learned that gentleness was not weakness and cooperation was not cowardice. Jake had learned that sometimes violence was necessary to protect innocent lives, and that there was honor in standing up to impossible odds. They had both discovered that real strength came from helping others, even when there was no benefit to themselves. In the distance, they could hear the calls of search parties looking for them. Soon they would be found and returned to their own people, but the friendship they had built and the lessons they had learned would stay with them forever. The sound of aircraft engines woke Jake and Kira on their fourth morning together. Through the jungle canopy, they could see human shuttles flying in search patterns, while strange, bird-like ships with Falanian markings circled overhead. Both there. Peoples had finally found them. Jake activated his emergency beacon, while Kira roared a traditional call that would let her people know she was alive. Within minutes, both groups had landed in a clearing near their cave. Jake could see his captain Lysa Hayes climbing out of the lead shuttle with the rescue team. Kira's pride leader Rex emerged from one of the bird ships with a group of armed warriors. Tension in the clearing was thick enough to cut with a knife. Human soldiers raised their weapons when they saw Kira, while Falanian warriors bared their claws at the sight of Jake. Both sides expected a fight. and were ready to start shooting at the first sign of trouble. "Stand down," Captain Hayes ordered. "Her troops. Dr. Martinez appears to be unharmed. Lower your blades," Rex commanded his warriors in the Falanian language. "Kira lives, and that is what matters." But despite their leader's words, both groups remained suspicious and hostile. Jake could see fingers on triggers and claws ready to strike. One wrong move would start a battle that might kill everyone in the clearing. Jake stepped forward with his hands raised. "Captain Hayes, I need to report that this Falanian warrior saved my life multiple times. Without her help, I would be dead right now." Kira moved to stand beside Jake, despite the weapons pointed at her. "Pride leader Rex, this human healer risked his own safety to remove poison from my body when I was dying. He showed honor worthy of any warrior." Captain Hayes looked confused. "Dr. Martinez, are you saying this alien helped you survive?" "More than that," Jake replied. "We worked together as a team. We fought monsters, saved innocent lives, and learned that our two species have much more in common than we thought." Rex studied Kira with sharp golden eyes. "Warrior Kira, do you claim this soft human fought beside you with courage?" "He has. The heart of a true warrior," Kira answered firmly. "His strength is different from ours, but it is real strength. He heals instead of hurting and protects instead of conquering. These are not weaknesses, they are powers we do not possess." The blue aliens they had rescued came forward from their hiding places in the jungle. Their leader spoke in broken human words mixed with Falanian phrases he had learned from listening to Jake and Kira talk. "Sky people save us," the alien leader sighed, pointing at Jake and Kira. "Work together like one mind in two bodies. Move heavy rocks. Fix broken bones. No ask for payment. Just help because we hurt." More blue aliens emerged carrying the injured ones that Jake had treated. They showed both groups how well the wounded were healing, thanks to Jake's medical care and Kira's strength in moving debris. The grateful aliens made it clear that both the human and Falanian had risked their lives for strangers. Captain Hayes looked at the evidence with growing amazement. "Dr. Martinez, are you telling me you performed surgery on an alien species you had never seen before?" "The wound was complicated," Jake explained, "but Kira trusted me enough to let me try. Without that trust, she would have died from poison. Without her protection from jungle predators, I would have been killed on the first night." Rex examined Kira's healing shoulder and saw the skilled work Jake had done. "The human did this surgery in the jungle with primitive tools?" "His hands are as steady as any surgeon in our mountain cities," Kira replied, "and his heart is braver than warriors, twice his size. When I needed help, he gave it without asking for anything in return." One of the human soldiers spoke up. "Captain, if they work together so well, why are our species always fighting each other?" Rex answered the question in his deep, rumbling voice. "Because we have been fools. We judged each other by appearance instead of actions. We listened to fear instead of wisdom." Captain Hayes nodded slowly. "Our diplomats have been trying to find common ground for years. Maybe they were looking in the wrong places. Maybe they should have been looking at basic values like courage and compassion instead of political treaties." Jake and Kira looked at each other and both smiled. They had found something that years of formal negotiations had missed. Respect between individuals could build bridges that no government agreement could create. "Captain," Jake said, "I request permission to continue working with Kira on establishing better relations between our peoples. We have learned things that could help prevent future conflicts." "Pride leader," Kira added, "I wish to study human healing arts and cooperation methods. There is much our warriors could learn from their way of thinking." Rex and Captain Hayes talked quietly with their advisors for several minutes. Both leaders could see the genuine friendship between Jake and Kira. Both also understood that this Unexpected partnership might be the key to lasting peace between their species. Very well, Captain Hayes announced. Dr. Martinez, you are hereby assigned as a special liaison to study Felanian culture and medicine. Your first mission will be to establish a joint research station here on Zarian 7. Rex's announcement came at the same time. Warrior Kira, you will serve as our first cultural exchange officer. You will learn human methods and teach them our ways in return. The clearing that had been full of suspicion and hostility a few minutes before was now buzzing with excited conversation. Humans and Felanians who had been ready to fight were now asking each other questions about their different worlds and customs. Jake and Kira stood together watching their peoples begin to talk instead of threaten. They had started as enemies who saved each other's lives. They had become friends who learned from each other's strengths. Now they would be partners building a future where both species could thrive together. 6 months later, Jake and Kira cut the ribbon on the new Zarian 7 research station. Humans brought their medical knowledge and technology. Felanians contributed their understanding of jungle survival and warrior disciplines. Scientists from both species worked side by side, studying the planet's unique ecosystem. The station became a model for cooperation that spread to other worlds. Trade agreements replaced military tensions. Cultural exchange programs brought young people from both species together to learn and grow. The friendship between a human doctor and a Felanian warrior had planted seeds that grew into lasting peace. Jake kept his promise to study Felanian medicine and learned healing techniques that had been perfected over thousands of years. Kira mastered human cooperation methods and taught her people new ways to solve problems without fighting. But their greatest achievement was proving that different kinds of strength could work together to create something better than either could. Build alone. The thorn that had brought them together in pain had become the foundation for a bond that would last for generations.